What is going on, everyone? I hope you're ready for an action-packed week because that's exactly what's coming. Some of the hottest stocks in the market like Nvidia, Palantir, Robinhood, and others all pulled back hard today as investors go into risk-off mode right ahead of the Jackson Hole event. Stick with us today. We have a lot to cover.
As we can see on the screen right now, the SPY ended up selling down quite a bit today. It actually was just under the average percent rise of 0.59%, closing at 0.54%, and there was a lot of selling pressure. If we go over to the slick charts here, we can see that some of the biggest stocks in the S&P were down. Specifically, 9 of the top 10 S&P 500 stocks closed in the red. Look at this box right here. Nvidia, number 1, the highest weighting with a 7.46% weighting in the SPY, down 3.4% today. Microsoft, down 1.5%. Apple, not quite as bad, 0.3%. Amazon, and the list goes on, right? And even if we scroll down the list here, we go and we look at some of the more popular stocks out there like Palantir, it was down 9.46% today. So we saw a pretty massive pullback out of the overall market, and some of the bigger stocks, and I would say some of the more popular even tech stocks, started to really fuel this rally. First off, Nvidia was one of the key players here, pushing the market lower, down 3.5%, like we said. But I would say it's not even the fact that it closed down 3.5%. Just look at the severity of that intraday price action. It's not like there was some weird gap down in after hours or something like that. This was a pretty sharp decline from open all the way until the market closed. And there is some news behind this. Nvidia has been very flat since China cautioned tech firms not to use their AI chips in some of the government applications. I know that was a big deal with them. They've been facing regulatory problems with China and between Trump's export controls and things of that nature. But Mike, I mean, there were just so many stocks pushing the market lower today, and I think that there's a bit of a rotation starting to go on here.
Yeah, the market's definitely in for a very exciting rest of the week, and we're certainly going to see some big moves. Like you pointed out, Nvidia had some somewhat negative news, but even if you look at any of the other, top popular names in the market right now, we are seeing big pullbacks, and honestly, this isn't that unexpected given how much the market has just been ripping up by over the past few months. Pullbacks are expected and healthy to certain degrees, and at the same time, when you have valuations so extended, it's just a matter of time before we see a pullback. Some of these pullbacks are a lot bigger and stronger than others, though. As we can see with Palantir, it actually posted its 5th red day, and today was disgusting.
It really was, Mike. Yesterday, Citron came out with that short report, and it ended up hitting Palantir in a pretty negative way. We actually filled the gap on the daily chart and even blasted through it all the way down to 156.30 here in after hours. I am very worried about Palantir in the short term, especially considering how low it got today. I expect it to maybe try and bounce intraday where it filled that gap, but once that broke, we just saw the selling pressure continue, and I'm definitely going to be looking for a larger sell-off to ensue with this one, Mike. And as we zoom out, on Palantir, there are some big supports coming up. I think most notably, this $147 to $150 range will be crucial over the next couple trading days. And if we could push $150 tomorrow, that would make for a pretty good drop and maybe some good intraday opportunities. But there's just a lot of negativity out there, and everybody's like, okay, why is this hitting right now at the beginning of the week? I think that there's a big combination, Mike. We're going to talk about rotation in a little while. I think that traders in general just think that tech stocks are a little bit too overextended, but at the same time, we have a huge event this week with the Jackson Hole Symposium that's going on from Wednesday to Friday. Powell's going to speak Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and there's even going to be an FOMC minutes report hitting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time as well. So all this combined heading into tomorrow and also just the end of the week, I think has the market a little fearful.
Yeah, exactly. And what we are seeing right now is a manifestation of, people transitioning from risk on mode to risk off mode. And, that isn't that unexpected given this giant event we have coming up, and especially when you have some news headlines like we saw on Investopedia today, where analysts from Evercore are warning of, in the worst case scenario, a 15% drop to come from this Jackson Hole event. It definitely causes some people to take profits. And looking closer at what some of these Evercore analysts were saying is that basically the market was super euphoric and eager for like some big rate cuts soon, specifically like a 50 basis point cut, and they suggested that Powell might like indirectly signal a 25 basis point rate cut, and if that happens, that can certainly disappoint a lot of people. But I don't know, Tom, a 15% drop seems a little crazy.
It definitely does, Mike. Like, whenever I'm thinking about Evercore's position here, I'm like, okay, they're talking about a 7 to 15% drop. I'm like, okay, 15%, obviously on the further range. That's pretty outlandish, right? At least what I would think right now. Whenever I look at the SPY itself, for a 15% drop to happen, at least, from the recent all-time high, that would actually put the SPY at a pretty low price, well under $600, I should say, going all the way down to right around $550 per share. And then if we also look at the 7%, that's right around that $600 per share mark. So that is quite the drop from where SPY is right now. So I definitely think that that's pretty outlandish as well. And I'm sure a lot of traders out there are going to think that, especially because the overall market's actually pricing in a 0% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut at the September meeting. Like, the FedWatch tool is posting a literal 0% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut. Now, of course, there could be other outlets like Calcium, etc., that might be a little bit higher than 0, but nonetheless, I think that it's pretty crazy to think that, and to think that there would be a 15% drop when obviously the market's not even pricing that in right now.
Looking a little closer at what the market normally does on Jackson Hole weeks, like we are in now, we can see that it varies quite a bit. Some years are extremely volatile to the downside, like 2022. I remember that like it was yesterday, while other years are, a little bit calmer and more bullish. We could see on average the market does tend to increase, but each year varies quite a bit. Looking at the market this time around, we can definitely see it's starting off in a bearish way. Tom, looking at the S&P 500 right now, what are some of the key levels you are looking at, not only heading into tomorrow, but I would say even more importantly, this big Jackson Hole event, and especially the Powell speech on Friday?
Yeah, I think that in the short term, there is a very crucial level on the SPY, and that is going to be right around 634 to 635, and I would say even closer to 635. But overall, the SPY has been bouncing in a lot of ranges lately, so give or take about $1 there. But we can see, like, where I'm pointing to with the green arrow, there's been a lot of touches and bounces right around that range with the SPY, and if we do end up breaking below this key support from today, very close to 639, we can see the SPY tried to bounce up, but ultimately it just barely held its ground here at the end of the day. If we end up flushing under that this week, I'm definitely going to be watching for 634, and ultimately maybe even a larger push down to a larger support down around 628 to 630. I really like these overall levels coming up here in the short term, and these are some ranges that I will be watching for if the SPY drops. But I do have to say, the SPY needs to break that key support from today. It tried to break it a couple times here at the end of the day, close to 639, but it ended up holding and bouncing up. I thought that, and I know I've said this a lot lately, Mike, that previous all-time high around 641.50 was critical. And today, with that breaking down, I think that puts us in more of a bearish stance than a bullish one. And once that broke down today, there was some really good downside opportunities. So use that as resistance for tomorrow, along with 643 and even 644, where again, we peaked off this morning, which was a perfect high from yesterday.
Tom, I have to give you a shout out. You've been on the money with these levels, not only with SPY, but especially with Palantir yesterday. So huge shout out to you. I will keep a close eye on all of these. And I certainly think that it's worth keeping in mind also the way in which the environment is changing too. So basically looking at this data here, we can see that positioning on Russell 2000 futures has almost never had bearish bets as strong as we have now. So as we can see on the chart here, we are at the most bearish level since the 2022 bear market, and this is actually one of the most bearish readings since 2008, which is crazy to say. And we could just see that there are clearly a lot of players out there with, significantly large positions, just positioning themselves to benefit off of a bearish move. This is specifically with small caps, so it certainly is weaker, and it's, not a bad area of the market to look at for our active traders out there. Look at ticker symbol IWM. This is the ETF version of the Russell 2000. It also has liquid options, so keep a close eye on it. And fun fact, the Russell 2000 is still the only major index that has not reached a new all-time high since 2021, which is pretty sad. But yeah, I definitely wanted to point out this data because it definitely caught my eye.
It really did mine as well, Mike. And I know a lot of traders do like to look at the Russell, and I do too sometimes. But right now, there is definitely a lot of bearish bets on it. And whenever I'm looking at the Russell, it is actually approaching some very key resistances on the daily chart. And that is a pretty bad stat. And I even saw another stat that said that even while the Russell's been doing bad, NVIDIA itself has a $4.5 trillion market cap and is now $1.5 trillion larger than the entire Russell 2000 combined. So I guess shout out to NVIDIA for beating out a major index. But nonetheless, I'll be keeping my eyes on IWM closely. And, if we do notice, let's say some good rejections off of this key resistance, I will start to look at some possible bearish positions. And ultimately, though, I do think over the longer term, it'll provide a good dip buy opportunity. But I think it's important to share this data for sure.
Definitely. And, while we have a lot of relatively bearish data today, and while the market definitely did fall, it's also worth acknowledging that some stocks are actually benefiting quite a bit right now. When we look at the heat map, we see the biggest, strongest companies selling off quite a bit. But Tom, there is there are a lot of industries that are doing good right now too.
There actually are, and right now we're looking at the heat map on a daily standpoint, so it's showing you the percentages of how these stocks have closed today, and we can see that in the top right corner here, consumer non-durables, healthcare stocks, things like that are really popping off. Like look at KO, 1.45%, Pepsi, 1.7%, DHR, SYK, LLY. So we're seeing some other sectors in the economy move. And today we had Home Depot, a retailer, actually post some pretty good earnings that ended up helping Lowe's, Walmart, and a few others run. If we change this to looking at the past week's performance, we can actually see how drastically this change is. Like LLY has ran up 10% in the past week, while Nvidia has fallen down 4% and Microsoft's down 2%. So we are seeing other parts of the market do well. So keep your eyes on some of these names out here. For example, like Pepsi, which is a pretty safe stock, KHC, KO, HD. And I do want to emphasize, I'm not saying that they're necessarily safe, for like super long-term investments every time or safe every single day or anything like that. But they are considered more safe haven stocks and stocks that aren't as volatile or as crazy, where people like to park their cash during times of market turmoil.
Definitely. Like what we're seeing right now is a rotation. And if you go back to the heat map, you can see very clearly where money is flowing out of NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, and Tesla. And you can see where money is flowing into. And it's certainly worth keeping the stocks where money is flowing into in mind, because that's, in the most direct sense, what a lot of the market is buying up right now. Because like you said, Tom, they're generally considered safer, more stable companies. So keep a close eye on these stocks. But Tom, there's no way we couldn't not mention Intel today. It had quite the day. What is going on here?
Intel stock ended up ripping again, and I know that they've had a lot of up and down candles lately. They closed up around 6.97% today, but there was actually a couple of headlines that ended up coming out today. So with the first one, Lutnick ended up saying that Intel would have to give government equity in return for their CHIPS Act fund, and apparently Biden obviously had this done. They had the CHIPS Act passed and everything, but now they're going to be changing things, and Intel is going to have to give some equity stakes in exchange for the funds from that act. At the same time, though, SoftBank actually just invested $2 billion into Intel, and in my opinion, this was the better piece of news from today that helped really shoot them up. SoftBank will pay $23 for each Intel share, a slight discount to Monday's closing price, but nonetheless, it's good to see them investing in them, and it looks like SoftBank CEO had some positive words to say about trying to invest in the United States, which could also help Intel in the longer term if, let's say, other players out there want to help invest in them. Nonetheless, though, this helped Intel stock quite a bit, and if we go to like a 5-minute chart, we can see that last night and very early this morning, Intel was on fire. It did fade off around the end of the day, though.
Yeah, like Intel's a stock that I love to see rise. I know we've hit on it quite a bit over the past few weeks and months, and from its recent low, right around $19 a share, it's already up 40%, and I'm really looking forward to the breakout past that like $27 to $28 level. Intel has been stuck in that range for so long now, and when it eventually breaks out, it should be very exciting to see. We definitely do still have some heavy resistance overhead, so of course anything can happen in the ultra short term, but I really do look forward to that $28 resistance break.
That is a huge level on Intel, Mike, and I really thought that coming off of this news this morning, if Intel had like a higher close today, that we might see that happen in the ultra short term. I still think that it's definitely plausible, though, and if we're able to break 2650 today, or tomorrow, I should say, then we should be able to, push towards that $28 next resistance. It can be a very fun stock, and I know a lot of people have even been looking at it, number one, because of the big money trade back from July 8th, but number two, a lot of people like to eye up this stock for the longer term because obviously there is like the chance of a good recovery going on with Intel, especially considering how the US wants to get into chips. And I feel like that there's a great opportunity not only in the short term for a possible breakout this week and next week, but even maybe for the next few years.
Beautiful. All right, well, shifting over into the earnings for tomorrow, we can see that Target will report before open, along with TJX, Baidu, and a handful of other companies. And that is about it for the earnings rundown for tomorrow. We do have Walmart and Zoom on Thursday, along with a handful of other stocks. We will cover them as they report. But besides that, Tom, let's jump right into the fun stuff, which are some setups and predictions. And a stock that is definitely on my radar is ticker symbol RGTI. This is a kind of like hype quantum company that has done very well over recent months, but we are definitely starting to see a lot of profit taking here, not only with the stock specifically, but also just the market as a whole, and especially some of these more hyped up risky names. RGTI is definitely on my bearish radar, not only for tomorrow, but over these next few weeks. I think the environment we are in is changing. I think we're going to see more and more profit taking out of some of the riskier companies in the market. And also that rejection off that $18 resistance was not good to see at all. And also when you have a stock down 9% like it was today, it shows that the sellers who are selling now are looking to get out quickly. So again, RGTI is definitely on my bearish radar.
That overhead resistance range and even the gap fill there right to $18 was pretty rough to see, and the rejection is definitely brutal. So I will be watching very closely, Mike, for a possible pullback as well. I know there's a lot of these quantum and just overvalued stocks in the short term that are pulling back a lot here today. But with my first setup, I'm actually looking at Tesla, one of the bigger names out there, to the downside. I did not like how Tesla fell back under 333 support today. Intraday, we can see such weird reactions at this level. We can see that around like lunchtime, there was this recovery effort and it rejected there and it fell down into the end of the day. So I'm going to be watching very carefully for another support break at that low of day, close to 327. So if we can fall under that tomorrow, I'm going to watch for a good continuation. Tesla was one of the bigger stocks pushing the SPY down today, of course. There was a lot of stocks pushing it down, but I also don't like how it's trading back into this wedge again. I think that's a bad sign, especially if that low from today breaks.
Sounds good. Another ticker that is definitely on the radar is Robinhood, ticker symbol HOOD. The company's been crushing it. The stock has been exploding over the past year, but we're definitely starting to see a lot of people rush to the exit all at once with this one. It fell by around 6.5% on the day, rejected hard off recent resistance right around like 117 to 118. Looking at the stock in the short term, especially if we see a break through this like $106 area, that would definitely be a rough sign. $100 is a big support that's coming up, but I think the risk reward playing this one to the downside is definitely favorable right now. And while I wouldn't be surprised if it fell tomorrow, it's more so on the radar for a potential breakdown through 106 and then eventually through 100 over these next few weeks.
This is a pretty overextended setup whenever you go to like a 4-hour chart. And I know that there's a lot of overextended stocks from the April lows, but Robinhood is definitely one of the main ones out there. So I will be watching for that 106 area breakdown as well. Set up an alert, guys. This one could be pretty fun over the next few trading days. But with my next setup, I'm looking at Google, and we're actually watching a very key level here at 200. So Google is also a bit overextended. If we zoom out on the 4-hour chart, it might not be as straight up as Robinhood was, but in the short term, it did try to break that $200 range today. We can see it actually bounced off of it pretty well, but for the next couple weeks and even the next couple days, especially with the Jackson Hole Symposium, I'll be watching this range to break down. If we go to the Bookmap here, we can see that there were a ton of buyers stacked up at that $200 range, and then there was 43,000 volume as they got wiped out today. But the stock ended up holding and moving higher, and then buyers even restack there. So if we end up giving out at 200, I'll be watching for more downside selling pressure and for good put opportunities. Again, kind of like the Palantir setup, I think that the overall risk reward, especially whenever you zoom out, is pretty solid.
Good stuff. Yeah, let's keep a close eye on Google in general, but especially that level you highlighted on Bookmap. There are a lot of traders stacked up there, so let's keep a close eye on that. And besides that, let's jump right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have Fastly, ticker symbol FSLY, to the upside.
They beat the odds today, closing up 4.66%. If they can break out above 743, then watch for a continuation.
All right, with the next one, we have Strategy, ticker symbol MSTR, to the downside.
I noticed a lot of crypto stocks tanked in a major way today. If MicroStrategy pulls under its low of day, very close to 333, then watch it down.
And then with the last one, we have D-Wave Quantum, ticker symbol QBTS, also to the downside.
A 7.49% drop. A lot of these stocks took a tumble today. If they break under 1520, then watch for a continuation as well.
Sounds good. So we have these 3 tickers on the radar for potential continuations tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels listed. So definitely keep them close on watch. And then besides that, Tom, let's jump right into today's $780,000 big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol RBRK. Today, the trader bought the 80 strike put options that expire on September 19th of 2025. This stock definitely sold off quite a bit today. And then also looking at this stock since June, it has been consolidating, and now it's definitely starting to make a meaningful move to the downside. Looking at these options, they are a little bit out of the money, but nothing too unreasonable. Basically, what the trader here is doing is happily accepting the trade-off of the increased risk of the option expiring out of the money, but in return, they have a much higher potential reward where if this stock does continue to fall, these options can do pretty well. These options also expire somewhat soon, and because of that, that shows that the trader here is expecting this stock to make a move lower pretty soon. Either way, I think it's definitely a ticker to keep on the radar, and especially if we continue to put more pressure on recent lows, especially under like $82, maybe like $81, that can definitely be a great sign for the bears.
I feel like that this setup is awesome on the daily chart. It's held this support multiple times, and I like the 80 strike because like if the support does give out, you would think that 80 would come into play pretty quickly, right? There is always the chance that they are shorting these, maybe looking for a bounce back up here or just to get assigned the shares. But I do like the prospect of them actually longing these puts and, you know, buying them to open, especially because of how, like I said, if the support does give out, I would think that this stock could end up falling down in a pretty decent way, especially considering how much it ripped up here. Like from those April lows to the highs, the stock ran from like $48 to $50 all the way up to $100. So over a 100% jump there. So yeah, if it gives out, you know, this stock can move quite a bit. The average percent drop is 1.89% today. I know that that's not like one of the craziest average percent drops out there, but it's definitely respectable.
No doubt. And if you're new to the channel, definitely make sure to subscribe so you could see every single day's big money trade, as well as important SPY levels and analysis, earnings, important events to keep on your radar, and so much more. We post all the time, and when you subscribe, you'll get our videos recommended to you more often. But we also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Zypher Vision, and the StockedUp Discord. They had some very nice 290% gains with some SPY put options today. So huge shout out to you, Zypher. Keep up the great work going forward. And if any of you are into short-term trading, definitely make sure to check out that first link in the description in the comments down below. Today our SurgeBot crushed it with Palantir. We can see the puts that it called out increased by 413%, but it also had some good action with Netflix puts that popped up by 173%, Robinhood puts that popped up by 124%, Intel calls that popped up by 110%. The list goes on and on. You get full access to our SurgeBot, all of our other bots, our weekly live events. You can chat with Tom and myself all day long, access the big money trades every single day before they are even released on YouTube, and so much more. Definitely check it out. You can save quite a bit with the coupon code down below. But besides that, we are set for a very exciting rest of the week. The market is moving in a pretty crazy way, and we're only to see bigger moves as the week goes on, given the events we have lined up. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget about that coupon code down below, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.